Down below there was only a vast white sea of cloud. Above there was the sun, and the sun was white like the clouds, because it is never yellow when one looks at it from high in the air. He was still flying the Spitfire. His right hand was on the stick, and he was working the rubber bar with his left leg alone. It was quite easy. The machine was flying well. He knew what he was doing. Everything is fine, he thought. I'm doing all right. I know my way home. I'll be there in half an hour. When I land, I shall taxi in and switch off my engine, and I shall say, "Help me to get out, will you?" I shall make my voice sound ordinary and natural. Then I shall say, "Someone help me to get out. I can't do it alone because I've lost one of my legs." They'll all laugh and think that I'm joking. And I shall say, "All right. Come on. Come and have a look." He glanced down again at his right leg. There was not much of it left, but there was no pain. He really felt fine. And because he still felt fine, he felt excited and unafraid. Suddenly he realized that he was no longer feeling good, that he was sick and giddy. I'm going to pass out, he thought. And he knew then that he must bail out, that there was not a second to lose. He looked out over the side of the cockpit. Down below there was only a vast white sea of cloud, and he realized that he did not know where he was. It'll be the Channel, he thought. I'm sure to fall in the drink. He throttled back, pulled off his helmet, undid his straps and pushed the stick hard over to the left. The Spitfire dipped its port wing and turned smoothly over onto its back. The pilot fell out. As he fell, he opened his eyes. The whole world was white, but sometimes it looked black. That was when he dozed off. Later, much later, he put out a hand and touched something. Slowly he opened his eyes and saw that he was holding the edge of a sheet. He screwed up his eyes and opened them again quickly. This time he saw the room. He saw the bed in which he was lying. He saw the grey walls and the door and the green curtains over the window. There were some roses on the table by his bed. Then he saw the basin on the table near the roses. It was a white enamel basin, and beside it there was a small medicine glass. This is a hospital, he thought. I am in a hospital. But he could remember nothing. He lay back on his pillow wondering what had happened. He remembered the Spitfire, and he remembered the bailing out. He remembered his leg. It seemed all right now. He looked down at the end of the bed, but he could not tell. He put one hand underneath the bedclothes and felt for his knees. He found one of them. But when he felt for the other, his hand touched something which was soft and covered in bandages. Just then the door opened and a nurse came in. "Hello," she said. "So you've waked up at last." She was not good-looking, but she was large and clean. She was between 30 and 40, and she had fair hair. More than that, he did not notice. "Where am I?" "You're a lucky fellow. You landed in a wood near the beach. You're in Brighton. They brought you in 2 days ago, and now you're all fixed up. You look fine." "I've lost a leg," he said. "Oh, that's nothing. We'll get you another one. Now, you must go to sleep. The doctor will be coming in to see you in about an hour." She picked up the basin and the medicine glass and went out. But he did not sleep. He wanted to keep his eyes open because he was frightened that if he shut them again, everything would go away. He lay looking at the ceiling. The nurse opened the door again and stood aside while the doctor came in. He was an army doctor, a major, and he had some last war ribbons on his chest. He was bald and small, but he had a cheerful face and kind eyes. "Well, well," he said, "so you've decided to wake up at last, hmm? How are you feeling?" "I feel all right." "That's the stuff. You'll be up and about in no time." The doctor took his wrist to feel his pulse. "By the way," he said, "some of the lads from your squadron are ringing up asking about you. They wanted to come along to see you, but I said that they'd better wait a day or two. Told them you were all right and that they could come and see you a little later on. Just lie quiet and take it easy for a bit, hmm? Got something to read?" He glanced at the table with the roses. "No? Well, nurse will look after you." With that, he waved his hand and went out, followed by the large, clean nurse. When they had gone, he lay back and looked at the ceiling again. As he lay watching it, he heard the noise of an aeroplane in the distance. He lay listening to the sound of its engines. It was a long way away. I wonder what it is, he thought. Suddenly his head jerked sharply to one side. Anyone who has been bombed can tell the noise of a Junkers 88. But where were the sirens and the guns? And that German pilot certainly had a nerve coming near Brighton alone in daylight. The aircraft was far away, and soon the noise faded. Later there was another. This one, too, was far away, but there was no mistaking it. He had heard that noise every day during the Battle of Britain. There was a bell on the table by the bed. He reached out his hand and rang it. The nurse came in. "Nurse, what were those aeroplanes?" "I'm sure I don't know. I didn't hear them. Probably fighters. Or bombers. I expect they were returning from France." "Why, what's the matter?" "They were Junkers 88s. I'm sure of it. I know the sound of the engines. There were two of them." "What were they doing over here?" The nurse began to straighten out the sheets and tuck them in under the mattress. "Oh, gracious me, you mustn't worry about a thing like that. Well, they never come over in daylight any longer. They were probably Lancasters. Or Flying Fortresses." "Nurse," he said. "Yes? Could I have a cigarette?" "Why, certainly you can." She went out and came back almost at once with a packet of players and some matches. She handed one to him, and when he had put it in his mouth, she struck a match and lit it. "If you want me again," she said, "just ring the bell." And she went out. Once, towards evening, he heard the noise of another aircraft. It was far away, but he knew that it was a single-engine machine. It was going fast, he could tell that. He could not place it. It wasn't a Spitfire. It wasn't a Hurricane. He did not know what it was, and it worried him. "Perhaps I'm very ill," he thought. "Perhaps I'm delirious." That evening the nurse came in with a basin of hot water and began to wash him. "You're looking fine this evening," she said. "They operated on you as soon as you came in. They did a marvelous job. I've got a brother in the RAF," she added. "Flying bombers." He said, "I went to school in Brighton." She looked up quickly. "Well, that's fine," she said. "I expect you know some people in the town." "Yes," he said, I know quite a few." She turned back the bedclothes and began washing his foot. She said, "This wretched soap won't lather at all. It's as hard as nails." He said, "None of the soap is very good now." But as he said it, he remembered something. He remembered the baths which he used to take at school in Brighton. The water was so soft that you had to take a shower afterwards to get the soap off your body. He remembered that sometimes they were even given calcium tablets, because the school doctor said that too much soft water was bad for the teeth. "In Brighton," he said, the water isn't—" She looked up. "The water isn't what?" "Nothing," he answered. "I was dreaming." That night he could not sleep. He lay awake thinking of the Junkers 88 and of the hardness of the water. He could think of nothing else. For a long time he lay awake, and once he sat up and said aloud, "I will prove that I am not crazy. I will make a speech about something complicated and intellectual." But before he had time to begin, he was asleep. He woke just as the first light of day was showing through the curtain. As he lay there, he remembered the day before. He remembered the Junkers 88 and the hardness of the water, and a small grain of doubt took root in his mind and began to grow. Slowly the grain of doubt grew, and with it came fear, the kind of fear that one gets because one feels that there is something wrong. He knew that he must do something, and he looked up and saw the window. It was fully 10 yards away. Somehow he must reach it and look out. He sat up. Then he pushed the bedclothes aside and carefully swung his body over until he was on the floor, kneeling on the carpet. He looked at the stump of his leg. It was beginning to hurt, and he could feel it throbbing, but he managed to crawl over to the window. Then slowly and painfully, he pushed aside the curtain and looked out. He saw a small house standing alone beside a narrow lane. There was an untidy garden and a green hedge separating the garden from the lane. He was looking at the hedge when he saw the sign. It was just a piece of board nailed to the top of a pole. There was something written on the board with white paint. Slowly he managed to see what the letters were. There were 3 words, and he spelled the letters out to himself as he managed to read them. G-A-R-D-E-A-U-C-H-I-E-N. Garde au chien. He repeated the words to himself as he began to realize the full meaning of the thing. Garde au chien, he said. Beware of the dog. So this is France. I am in France. Now the throbbing in his right thigh was very great, but he crawled back to bed and with difficulty hoisted himself in. It was some time before the nurse came in. "Good morning. How are you today?" "Good morning, nurse." He looked at her carefully. Her hair was very fair and she looked pleasant, but there was something uneasy about her eyes. They were never still. But something about her movements also. They were too sharp and nervous to go well with the casual manner in which she spoke. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. "Yes." "Good. There's someone coming down to see you from the Air Ministry after breakfast. They want a report or something. I expect you know all about it. How you got shot down and all that. I won't let him stay long." He did not answer. There was a sentence running through his head. It was a sentence which Johnny, the intelligence officer, always repeated to the pilots every day before they went out. He could see Johnny now, leaning against the wall of the dispersal hut with his pipe in his hand, saying, "And if they get you, don't forget just your name, rank, and number. Nothing else. For God's sake, say nothing else." Later, she brought his breakfast tray. "There you are," she said. "I've got you an egg. Can you manage all right?" "Yes." "Are you feeling all right?" "Yes." "Good. If you want another egg, I might be able to get you one. Just ring the bell if you want any more." And she went out again. He had finished eating when the nurse came in again. She said, "Wing Commander Roberts is here." She beckoned and the Wing Commander came in. "I'm sorry to bother you like this," he said. He was an ordinary RAF officer dressed in a uniform which was a little shabby. He wore wings and a DFC. He was fairly tall and thin, with plenty of black hair. He took a printed form and a pencil from his pocket, and he pulled up a chair and sat down. "How are you feeling?" There was no answer. "Tough luck about your leg. I know how you feel. I hear you put up a fine show before they got you." He lay in bed quite still, watching the man in the chair. The man in the chair said, "Well, let's get this stuff over. I'm afraid you'll have to answer a few questions so that I can fill in this combat report. Let me see now. Well, first of all, what was your squadron?" The man in the bed did not move. He looked straight at the wing commander and he said, "My name is Peter Williamson. My rank is squadron leader. And my number is 972457.
Beware of the Dog by Roald Dahl was read by James Aubrey and the producer was Mitch Raper.